Next on Investigative Report. The Zombie Apocalypse. How humans behave after a nuclear war. Currently, a Trident II submarine-based missile could strike in as little as 10 minutes after launch to target. With talk of Russia using tactical nuclear weapons in its recent conflict with Ukraine, what would a nuclear war look like with the first strike coming from a nuclear power? We know after the weapon leaves the atmosphere, it has no wind resistance, and in space, all current intercontinental ballistic missiles are hypersonic, reaching speeds about 15,000 miles per hour. Once that missile re-enters the atmosphere, residents at ground zero can expect a fireball with the equivalency of a star being ignited within our delicate atmosphere. Shortly thereafter, we can expect a retaliatory strike, equivalent of a mutually assured destruction. But even more critical than this is what becomes of the human race after the last war. And now, the zombie apocalypse. How humans behave after a nuclear war. Scenario. The war in Ukraine threatens to destabilize the map by forcing a conflict between the United States and Russia. Both presidents inform their populace that they are ratcheting up the military forces in the region to successfully defeat the other. Since NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, has a policy of attack on one as attack on all, the U.S. position is bolstered for a defensive attack. Within weeks of attacking Russia and pushing back its forces, the Soviet Union decides it has no other choice but to defeat its enemies on the battlefield with tactical nuclear weapons. Russia at this time is the only current country that has what has been referred to as a supersonic nuclear-tipped missile. It is these missiles they will probably use first to level the playing field, which can deteriorate into a nuclear response by all sides. So that you may know what we are facing, a single 1 kiloton nuclear weapon can destroy a major city out to a distance of 40 to 80 miles, depending on how you explode it. In order for you to survive, you would have at most 3 hours as the fallout begin to find shelter. For this reason, this option should always be kept off of the table, no matter if that table originates in Russia or the United States of America. The dangerous fallout zone can easily stretch 10 to 20 miles from detonation depending on explosive yield and weather conditions. Scientists say considerably smaller radiation doses will make people seriously ill. Thus, the survival prospects of persons immediately downwind of the burst point would be slim unless they could be sheltered or evacuated. It has been highly reported that fires ignited by hundreds of thousands of nuclear explosions would release millions of tons of soot, blocking sunlight and inducing global environmental effects known as a nuclear winter, blocking out the sun for generations to come. This begs the question of how many nuclear warheads does the superpowers possess together? Well, as of 2019, there were 15,000 nuclear weapons on the planet. It would take just 3 nuclear weapons to destroy one of 4,500 cities on Earth, meaning 13,500 bombs in total, which would leave 1,500 left over after the last city is completely obliterated. Destroying the last livable area on Earth would leave this planet as barren and lifeless as Mars for millions of years to come. In fact, it is believed that we will look like a twin to the 4th planet revolving around our sun. But is there any place that humans could inhabit on the planet to save them in a nuclear war? Survivability modeling performed by The Guardian in 2016 found that should atomic annihilation be on the cards, one of the safest places to live would be Antarctica, because the sub-zero continent is miles from anywhere. Or Easter Island in the South Pacific, which was more than 2,000 miles from South America. Seemingly, these two areas would offer you a measure of protection while the radiation settles. If you're wondering how long would it take for radiation to clear after nuclear war, the answer is 1 to 5 years after the last attack. It would seem then that the greater, more immediate threat would be to remain clear of the target area, which is a list of some of the most major cities that they're looking for. The organization Redliner has identified 6 cities that have the greatest likelihood of being attacked. They are New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., of course, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Houston. Currently on New York, Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles emergency management systems are the only ones who know how to respond to a radioactive disaster. Let's talk about blast radius, or the danger zone for injury and vaporization from the largest nuclear weapon in history. At 40 miles high, once it penetrates the stratosphere, everything within 36 miles of the impact will be vaporized. But severe damage can extend to 150 miles radius out from the blast, enough to entirely annihilate any modern major city, including the suburbs. But it wouldn't take a ground explosion to throw this planet back into the Dark Ages. That feature would be easily accomplished by an atmospheric explosion as well. If an attacking nuclear-powered nation were to detonate a high-altitude explosion, the electromagnetic effects of the bomb would generate an EMP, or what is termed an electromagnetic pulse, which has the potential of damaging and destroying most electronic devices over a widespread area for at least 12 hours, if not permanently. In short, there goes your beloved personal iPhone you need to communicate with your family. From here, our infrastructure would face catastrophic failure, beginning with the crash of the stock market, followed closely by the breakdown of the U.S. monetary system. Eventually, the way we value and use currency would cease to exist. As a result, any savings that would remain in your bank would be instantly worthless. The country's electrical grid system would also be at risk from extreme surge produced by such weapons. When detonated, an EMP produces a pulse of energy that creates a powerful electromagnetic field capable of short-circuiting a wide range of electronic equipment, particularly computers, satellites, radios, radar receivers, and even civilian traffic lights. It is these causes and effects of a nuclear war would be just the beginning of turning our modern-day society into the Dark Ages. A Dark Age nightmare of starving masses of people who did not die in a first wave attack. These are the people who remain left behind, equivalent to a biblical plague. This group of persons we will term post-nuclear zombies. Post-nuclear zombies would be citizens that were either injured by the blast or radiation, but survived despite the tragedy. Their mindset would be completely altered for survival mode only. These zombies would turn on anyone for food and survival essentials. These zombies would see people as food. In the worst case scenario, they would go after healthier people as a source of food. Why? Because healthier persons may not have been burnt, injured, or received as much radiation from a first wave attack, making them a highly attractive food source, absence of animal meat and fresh plant sources destroyed during the initial attack. But until this day came around, there will be every man for themselves mentality that would have those who were killed during the initial blast seem highly favored in dying. Here is some important information you might want to keep in mind from READY, an official government site that gives you information on what to do before and after a nuclear attack. First, get inside. Get inside the nearest building to avoid radiation. Brick or concrete is best. Then remove your contaminated clothing and wipe off or wash unprotected skin if you were outside after the fallout arrived. Hand sanitizer does not protect against fallout. Also avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth if possible. Do not use disinfectant wipes on your skin. Go to the basement or the middle of the building. Stay away from the outer walls and roof. Try to maintain a distance of at least 6 feet between yourself and people who are not part of your household. If possible, wear a mask if you're sheltering with people who are not part of your household. Children under 2 years old, people who have trouble breathing, and those who are unable to remove masks on their own should not wear masks. Stay inside. Stay inside for 24 hours unless local authorities provide other instructions. Continue to practice social distancing by wearing a mask and by keeping a distance of at least 6 feet between yourself and people, as I said before, who are not your household. Families should stay where they are inside. Reunite later to avoid exposure to dangerous radiation. Keep your pets inside. Stay tuned. Tune into any media available for official information such as when it is safe to exit and where you should go. Battery-operated and hand-cranked radios will function after nuclear detonation. Cell phone, text messaging, television, and internet services may be disrupted or unavailable due to cell phone tower collapsing and satellites that have crashed after losing geosynchronous orbits. But even more than surviving afterwards, it's what to do before one of these events happens. So what you have to do is prepare now. Identify shelter locations. Identify the best shelter location near where you spend a lot of time, such as at home, work, and school. The best locations are underground and in the middle of larger buildings. While commuting, identify appropriate shelters to seek in the event of detonation. Remember, outdoor areas, vehicles, and mobile homes do not provide adequate shelter. Look for basements or the center of a large multi-story building. Make sure you have an emergency supply kit for places you frequent and might have to stay for 24 hours. It should include bottled water, packaged foods, emergency medicine, a hand-cranked radio, and a power source. If possible, store supplies for 3 or more days. If you are unable to set aside items like soap, hand sanitizer that contain at least 60% alcohol, disinfectant wipes, and general household cleaning supplies that you can use to disinfect surfaces you touch regularly, keep in mind each person's specific needs, including medications. Don't forget the needs of pets. Obtain extra batteries and charging devices for phones and other critical equipment. Being prepared allows you to avoid unnecessary excursions and to address minor medical issues at home, alleviating the burden on urgent care centers and hospitals. Remember that not everyone can afford to respond by stocking up on necessities. For those who can afford it, making essential purchases and slowly building up supplies in advance will allow for longer time periods between shopping trips. This helps to protect those who are unable to procure essentials in advance of the event and must shop more frequently. Here's how to survive during the attack. If warned of an imminent attack, immediately get inside the nearest building and move away from the windows. This will help provide protection from the blast, heat, and radiation of the detonation. When you have reached a safe place, remember, as I said before, to try and maintain a distance of at least 6 feet between yourself and people who are not part of your household. If you are outdoors when a detonation occurs, take cover from the blast behind anything that might offer protection. Lie face down to protect your exposed skin from heat and flying debris. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth if possible. If you are in a vehicle, stop safely and duck down within the vehicle. After the shockwave passes, get inside the nearest best shelter location for protection from potential fallout. You will have 10 minutes or more to find an adequate shelter before the fallout comes. Be inside before the fallout arrives. The highest outdoor radiation levels from fallout occur immediately after the fallout arrives and then decrease with time. Stay tuned for updated instructions from emergency response officials. If advised to evacuate, listen for information about routes, shelters, and procedures. If you have evacuated, do not return until you are told it is safe to do so by local officials. Make plans to stay with friends or family in case of evacuation. Keep in mind that public shelter locations may have changed due to the COVID-19. Check with your local authorities to determine which public shelters are now open. Finally, here are some hazards to be aware of that are related to nuclear explosions. Number 1. Bright flashes can cause temporary blindness for less than a minute after the bomb. 2. A blast wave can cause death and injury and damage to structures several miles out from the blast. 3. Radiation can damage cells of the body. Large exposures can cause radiation sickness. 4. Fire and heat can cause death, burn injuries, and damage to the structure several miles out. 5. Electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, can damage electrical power equipment and electronics several miles out from detonation and cause temporary destructions further out. Fallout. Fallout is radioactive, visible dirt and debris raining down from several miles out from the blast and can cause sickness to those who are outside. The day after an attack would see a breakdown of law and order and edible food, the likes that no society has seen since the Irish potato famine. When most people consider the damage after nuclear war, they neglect to imagine that the average grocery store only holds enough food for 1 week. And when citizens loot those stores after conflict, there is no food remaining for anyone. Most every American remembers and fears the looting, burning, and utter destruction that went on after George Floyd's death. But no one can comprehend that this would look like on a worldwide scale. By definition, the destruction of society by a nuclear weapon immediately destroys the infrastructure for receiving a resupply of food. And if we expand further the food source for the mass of society, today's supply system works off of a global distribution system that is mostly computer-based. So once that computer system is gone, you have no way of receiving food. I mean, even if farmers and factories could do a massive resupply effort, they would have no way of knowing what stores needed on a global basis. We saw an example of this breakdown during the last COVID-19 pandemic, in which once the system had to ramp up, it took too long to get going. But at least there remained a system in place to get going. In a lawless society, the number of robberies, rapes, and murders overnight would increase exponentially, as police would not be able to control, let alone protect the country's citizens from harm any more than they can defend themselves from harm. This will lead to many people joining militias to stay safe as a group. Others who have ex-military backgrounds will fare better in underground bunkers and storage facilities as long as they can improvise and fight off the zombies that will seek to do them harm in that facility until they gain control. There, a massive grab for supplies, food, ammunition, communication equipment would be key. Once a form of order is restored in regions, then and only then can we help give ease to the suffering of the vast amount of nuclear exposed, flesh-eating zombies. For MNN, this is Charles Rivers. We ask you to plan ahead, and we leave you now with some of the most amazing nuclear weapons that they fired off in the 50s and 60s in the United States of America. Thanks for watching.